Hey y'all, my name is Susan Sparks and I am the senior pastor here at Madison Avenue Baptist Church, right here in New York City. We are a diverse community brought together by faith where everyone is welcome. We hope you enjoy our service today. The title of my sermon today is, Go Ahead, Tell Me I'm Unworthy. Things happen that change the trajectory of our lives. Sometimes they're big things. Sometimes they are traumatic things. But many times they're subtle things, little things, silly things. But nonetheless, they change how we engage with the world. Mine, or at least one of mine, happened in third grade. I was standing outside my classroom door waiting to make my grand entrance for a book report I was about to do, dressed as Elvis Presley. Okay, I know it sounds crazy, but in the prior couple of days, everyone else's book report had been so boring. I mean, Alan Roberts chose James and the Giant Peach, and he brought a peach. Really? And then Sally Johnson picked a book on Abraham Lincoln, and she brought Lincoln Logs. I remember this vividly to explain the book. I'm like, wow. And then my favorite was Susan Charles, who read Pippi Longstockings and brought a pair of socks for her book report. You know, even at this early age, my little kind of comedian performer heart was starting to shine out, and I wanted to do something that nobody else had done, so I chose a book on Elvis so I could perform it. My best friend, Ann Everett, who had come to the bathroom with me to help me get dressed, was standing with me in the doorway, and kind of looked me up and down and was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Well, you said it was cool." She was like, "Well, that's before the sideburns." I mean, I glanced at the reflection of myself in the glass doors. You know, the polyester pants and the go-go boots and the plastic guitar was not that big a deal. But then the sideburns. Oh my gosh, the sideburns. Made of cotton balls that I had dyed black with shoe polish and glued them on my face. That might have put it over the edge. So before I had time to reconsider, the door flung open and our teacher's voice bellowed out, "Our next book report is by a special guest, all the way from Memphis, Tennessee. Please welcome, boys and girls, Elvis." I took a deep breath and strutted into the classroom, strumming my guitar, singing Hound Dog, and making a motion kind of like I was doing a hula hoop. And when I finished my grand entrance, I struck kind of an Elvis pose, and I said, "Thank you. Thank you very much." I thought it was the finest thing ever. I was so proud of myself. And then I came back to earth and realized that there was utter silence coming from the class. And then hysterical laughter. And not laughter as in this is funny, but laughter as in you are so very weird. And they kept laughing. And even the teacher was laughing. And then Alan Roberts, the one I really didn't like, yells out, "You're stupid." And that's when Elvis, tearing up, turned, ran out the door, and left the building. Well, I got a B on the book report, I think out of pity. That experience, goofy as it sounds, branded an ominous message into my little 8-year-old brain. Creativity, uniqueness, who I was at my core, was bad. It made me different. And being different meant that people would reject you. And who wants that? I mean, I wanted to be liked, I wanted to fit in, I wanted to be considered worthy like everybody else. So what did I do in response? I started to dial down the creative energy and morph into something less visible, something safer. Kind of like an insect that we read about that year in science class. It was called a walking stick. And it was a little insect that would transform itself into looking like a tree branch, the environment in which it lived. I mean, it grew a body that looked like a twig, even with moss markings. It even changed its movements to mimic the small branches on which it sat. It did that to protect itself from predators. It changed who it was in order to be safe. So I, like many of us during our lives, turned into a walking stick. I began to morph into something I was not in order to be safe. I stopped raising my hand in class so much. I didn't volunteer anymore for plays or performances. I started dressing like my friends, talking like my friends, and so it goes. We begin to give pieces of ourselves away, little bits at a time. We start making safe choices. We choose safe friends, safe careers, safe relationships. And then it becomes a vicious cycle, because the more you give of yourself, the more you give away who you are, the dimmer your light becomes. You know, there are many versions of this story. And frankly, mine is pretty privileged. I could camouflage the creativity. But there were many other kids in the class who were judged and couldn't camouflage. Like my friend Cassandra, who was one of the few black students in our school. She was set apart as different, but she couldn't morph or change. She had to deal with the rejection head on. And there are many versions of this story in life where who we are at our core sets us apart as different. It could be our personality. It could be our gifts. It could be our race or our gender or our language or our religion or our nationality or our sexual orientation. And the world tends to judge different as bad. We've all experienced it in some form, some of us on a more privileged level and some not. But the result of being different, no matter how we experience it, generates the same obstacle. And that obstacle is shame. The author and psychologist Brené Brown has written extensively on shame. And in fact, if you're into TED Talks, she has a great TED Talk online called The Power of Vulnerability that you might be interested in. And she defines shame as the fear of disconnection, the idea that there's something about us that if other people know or see, we won't be worthy of connection. Shame is corrosive. It eats away at us from the inside, and it dictates our choices because we treat ourselves as we see ourselves. If we don't see ourselves as worthy, then we will drive ourselves into the ground in an attempt to make ourselves worthy. We will say yes to everything. We will fight to be the best at everything. We will take on every job and give every cell in our body to that project and work round the clock, burn the candle, so it will be perfect. We will destroy ourselves in order to try and be worthy. Well, guess what? Here's my 3-word summary of the sermon today. Ready? We are worthy. Every single person on this earth is worthy. We were born worthy. And there are 3 things I have to say in support of this. This is the lawyer coming out. It's a 3-point argument. We are worthy. Number 1, our worth is not based on the judgment of this world. Just look at God's words to Samuel that Nancy read for us. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Our worth is not based on the judgment of the world or even our own judgment. I mean, sometimes we can be our worst enemies on this. Remember Jesus' words in Matthew? Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more value than they? We are worthy. At our core, in all our quirky personalities and wondrous, colorful gifts, in who we love, in how we look, in how we live, we are worthy. Because our worth is based right here, not on the judgment of the world. And the second thing I want to share with you is the fact that diversity is our strength. I mean, think about it in terms of nature. Diversity is nature's strength. We see it, in nature's ability to change, adapt, and evolve. That comes from diversity. We see it everywhere, from Mount Everest to Death Valley. Pekingese to draft horses, black holes to exploding stars, the Navajo people to the Maasai tribesmen in Tanzania. Diversity is also our strength. It is what sets us apart in the sea of kind of robotic corporate soldiers. It is what makes each of us irreplaceable. The tragedy is that in constantly shunning our diverse gifts, we grind down our uniqueness to a smooth slab of conformity. It's like the old saying, if you try and hammer a round peg into a square hole, you destroy the peg. Let me tell you a quick story on that. Years after the Elvis debacle, I found myself as a trial lawyer in Atlanta, and I had taken that choice for a million reasons, but not the least of which it was safe. And I was approaching it in every safe way imaginable. I had worked hard in school and gotten good grades, and I had gone and gotten a big law firm job in Atlanta, and I would show up in my perfect little lawyer suit, and I would use all the big lawyer words, blah, 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 right? But somewhere in all of that properness, that creative side still was bubbling. And so unbeknownst to my law partners, I decided to start singing country music and doing stand-up comedy in these dark, ugly bars in Atlanta. No one from either world knew about it. So I would leave the law firm, go sing some country music, not tell them I was a lawyer, and then I'd come back to the law firm and not tell them I was doing this country thing. One night, I was at a bar, and I look out, and there is the managing partner from my law firm sitting front row. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna lose my job right now. And he came up afterwards, and he said, where's that woman on stage in the courtroom? She'd make a great trial lawyer. And it dawned on me in that moment that the power in life comes not from getting the perfect skill set or the perfect resume. There's a load of people out there with that. The power comes when you take your heart and your passion and your uniqueness and you marry it with that skill set, and then you bring it forth. You got to bring all of who you are to what you do. We can't hammer a round peg into a square hole. Our worth is not based on the judgment of the world. Diversity is our strength. And last but not least, authenticity is our gift, perhaps our greatest gift. The psalmists tell us, and this has got to be one of my favorite psalms, "For you formed my inward parts." You, God, formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. The jazz saxophonist Charlie Parker put it another way. He said, if you don't live the blues, it won't come out of your horn. God made us this way. Each one of us, with our gifts and all of what we bring, God made each of us fearfully and wonderfully diverse. Who are we to tell God that it's not worthy? I'm reminded of the powerful words of Kristen Beck, a retired Navy SEAL hero deployed 13 times over 2 decades, including stints in Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. She received the Bronze Star Award for Valor and the Purple Heart for wounds suffered in combat, and she is also transgender. When our president announced this summer that the U.S. military would bar transgender people from serving, she said, and I quote, "Tell him to meet me face to face. And then, go ahead, tell me I'm unworthy." I'd give every penny in my bank account to see that happen. Oh, I would love to see that happen. I mean, I don't know if you've seen her on the news. This is beautiful, strong, powerful woman, a military hero with a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart, standing face to face with our president saying, go ahead, tell me I'm unworthy. Kristen Beck healed so many with her words and her brave stand. And you know what? The same call comes to us. When we live into our truth, when we stand firm in the face of judgment, we are a witness and an invitation to others to do the same, even though we may never know it. I mean, 99% of the people we touch in this life, we probably will never know about. But just because we don't see a big scoreboard with the names of the people listed, look, Susan helped the following people. It's not there. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean they weren't helped. It's like the old saying, the farmer does not put a seed in the ground and then scream over it. In faith, he leaves it alone. So we plant and we wait and we live into our truth and we stand firm in the face of judgment and we offer a witness and an invitation for others to do the same. God offers the same invitation to us in Jeremiah when he says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for welfare and not evil. Plans for a future and a hope. So this week, when the world starts to tell us that we are lesser, when we feel ourselves beginning to shrink, pull away, weaken, I want us to remember those words in Jeremiah. I want us to remember that our diversity is our strength and our authenticity is our gift. I want us to remember U.S. Navy SEAL hero Kristen Beck, so that when the world comes at us with judgment and shame, we too can stand and say to the face of our critics with power and honor, go ahead. Go ahead. Tell me I'm unworthy. And the people said, Amen.
Thanks for joining us. Madison Avenue Baptist Church is located at 31st and Madison Avenue in New York City. Our website is www.mabcnyc.org.